welcome to S&M Radio. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Mark.
This is the last episode of 2015, and
Woohoo!
Child's Play this episode.
And why are we doing Child's Play again?
Child's Play is kind of considered, in a weird way, a Christmas movie, even though Christmas is not mentioned at all in Child's Play. It's more of a birthday movie that just happens to take place in the wintertime.
I see. Okay.
So, but I mean, if you do
There's a present in there. And the present is the representation of Christmas.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember, too, if there's even, like, Christmas trees or anything in it. I'm not...
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking is... Because I knew he gets Andy gets the doll as a present, but I was thinking it was Christmas. But yeah, okay, so it was his birthday.
Yep. If you do, like, a Google search for Christmas horror movies, Child's Play does come up.
Let's do it. Yeah, it's a classic. It's one of those, it's spawned so many sequels. Chucky's a household name now.
One of the things that we had talked about earlier on this show was how, like, when you talk about recognizable horror figures, some people would put Chucky in the same rankings as Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Leatherface, Pinhead. He definitely is a household name for sure, even though...
Original Child's Play is, going back and thinking about all the different horror characters that were out at the time. We had the slashers and, Jason, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, and all of that. And we didn't have any, looking back at, the doll-type movies, because there were always, good concepts in, short stories or, like the Twilight Zone episode, Talking Tina, different episodes with mannequins and ventriloquist dummies that had been used, but there hasn't really been a good horror movie based upon a doll up until Child's Play. The only one I can think of is the one from the 70s, Magic, with Anthony Hopkins, which was a pretty good movie. It was a little bit more of a thriller than a horror movie, but Child's Play was kind of the first take on the doll being the villain. So I think he did a really, really good job of it. There was the Trilogy of Terror with the little voodoo doll thingy, or what do they call it again? The tiki doll. Yeah, that's sure. What I'm thinking of. And then there was a movie called Dolls, and I'm not sure if that was before or after Child's Play though, because that was late 80s as
that
well.
Was a Charles Band movie.
And so that kind of took it into a whole nother level of the toys coming to life. So what'd you think of Child's Play? What'd you think of the Chucky and the design and everything?
From the original movie, this is back in the late 80s, 1988 is when it came out. And one of the things, even now when you go back and revisit it, if you take some of the aspects out of the movie that, kind of date it, for one thing, everybody's using, I think in that movie, they were actually using wired landline telephones, and you can tell everybody's dressed for the 80s in the movie, of course. The actual doll itself, the Chucky doll, is great in this movie. I mean, it's all practical effects with him, and even the first 3/4 of the movie, when it's just this Cabbage Patch like doll that doesn't really do much. He kind of moves his head a little bit and moves his eyeballs. Even that alone is pretty cool. But then towards the end of the movie, I mean, it's really the climax of the movie when he reveals himself to the adults in the movie. Even that is really cool. And, it's one of those things you're like, how did they do that in the 80s? But yeah. I mean, overall, I thought this movie was great, being a late 80s horror movie. One of the things I kept thinking of when I was watching this movie was they were trying to go off some of the success of Freddy Krueger with having this doll, have all these one-liners and being kind of a sarcastic jackass the entire time and, this kind of stuff. which is kind of the feel that I got from it. Like you had said before, it was fairly original in its own right. One of the things that I kept thinking of when I just rewatched this recently was the fact that that little boy that was in this movie, how terrified did that kid have to be, making this movie? And maybe he wasn't. Maybe they didn't expose him to any of the stuff after the fact or before the fact or during the fact or whatever. But I just kept thinking, like, that's got to be traumatic to be a kid, and you're making this movie, and he had to have only been like 7 or 8 or 9 at the time of making the movie. So,
I love your comparison to Freddy Krueger, because I think that's the thing with Chucky. That his character really is that wisecracking, very cynical, snarky, kind of demonic sort of like take on innocence. And I think like as the movies progressed, just like Freddy, they capitalized on that, made him more silly, made it more humorous, real dark comedy. Like Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky that's dark comedy right there, completely just black comedy. And that's kind of what, just like Freddy. I mean, I think they wanted another franchise character where like you would root for the villain, and I think it works. And, I can't picture Chucky any other way. Looking back, though, like when I think about it, I think in some ways it may have actually been scarier had that not been the case, though. And another thing I wasn't a big fan of. Now, again, I like the movie. I do think it's a good movie. I'm not going to, and it is what it is. And it's obviously had a lot of success. I wasn't a huge fan of the idea of seeing the villain or like the Charles Lee Ray character, who the character was, or like the less I know, I think it's scarier to me. So I kind of wish like that opening scene where they chase him through the toy store and he finds the doll and all that. I think I would kind of wish that wasn't in there. That would be like one of the points. Like looking back, I think it would have been scarier without that.
Had him just be the good guy doll.
Yeah, like just we don't know how it happened, but he was somehow this doll was like infected. And like, whether it be a soul inside of it or just some sort of weird, creepy spirit or whatever. But that's just, that just thinking about it. And because one of my most terrifying memories is watching the USA Network's Saturday Nightmares. And they used to play these little short films. And one of them was about a dummy. And it was just basically this, this lady, her husband leaves for work and she's left alone in the apartment all day, and this dummy that he had comes to life and just starts attacking her for no reason. And it's just an absolutely terrifying movie. Like it's just like a nightmare, the way it plays out and the music and everything. And it's because you don't know why anything's happening. Now maybe with a full feature film, you need to add more storylines and everything. But I think some of that ultimately made it less scary, but that's just my opinion.
So one of the things we were talking about before we started recording, and that is Star Wars, and we're not going to get into a Star Wars discussion right now. We could, but we won't. But one of the things that I noticed when I was watching this movie kind of goes back to not just Star Wars, but all of the Transformers and Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all those shows that were huge when me and you were kids. And that goes along the lines of all the marketing that was in this movie for the character. So I don't think we really flat out said earlier, but this doll is a good guy doll. And, this is set in the 80s. So there was good guy cereal. There was a good guy TV show. One of the things that he got, one of the other presents he got for his birthday was a good guy tool kit. So there was all this merchandise that went along with this good guy character. And I haven't done any research, but I wonder if you can find some of that stuff out there. Like if you could find, I'm sure you can, like a cereal box from Good Guy Cereal, or like an actual play set, that good guy toolkit that he had. I would assume that they would have that out there because I know you could buy the Chucky dolls.
Yeah, I'm sure they got a lot of the collectibles and stuff out there of that. And it was also kind of based off of, I don't know if you remember back then, but there was a doll called My Buddy. You remember that doll?
I don't.
It was they had a little theme song, and it would, they'd play the commercials for it during the cartoon hour or whatever, after school hour. But the doll looked very similar to Chucky. I mean, it didn't have the wild hair. It had kind of shorter hair and a baseball cap, I think. But it had the little overalls and all that. It had a kind of a similar look. So
the thing I kept thinking about this entire time was Cabbage Patch dolls. Could you imagine?
Yeah, similar to that. Yeah, it's one of those movies. I remember when it came out. Everybody was talking about it. It kind of very similar to like how we talked about the Freddy comparison. I mean, when Freddy came out, that and Chucky slowly became like the next Freddy at that point. He was like the late '80s. He's kind of passing the torch, so to speak, for the one-line
I would agree with that.
horror movie icon. Yeah, I think the first time I saw it must have been either on cable or we rented it or something. But I know that I had a copy on tape.
Cool.
And I was pretty religiously watched that quite often. But yeah, so Child's Play. I will say probably my favorite scene in this movie, probably the most impactful scene, was when, the story is basically the doll is just kind of communicating with the kid, and there's been a death or two, and nobody believes the kid that the doll talks. They all obviously think it's the kid's imagination or whatever. So finally, he's like wants to test it to see if this thing is what's going on, and it talks. It kind of goes on without its batteries, and then that flips her out. So she takes it to the fireplace, and she threatens to throw him in the fire if he doesn't speak, and he comes to life. And that scene to me that's probably the most impactful scene of the whole movie, because that's when she gets it. Oh my gosh, my son wasn't lying. That this is really happening.
Primarily, I noticed this because I watched The Terminator, and then I watched Child's Play like in a row. And when he got thrown into the fire and he got all burned up and stuff, I was like, oh, he got Schwarzeneggered. Because he comes, and the only thing, which I guess if this would be a complaint, like to be real or keep it realistic, would be the fact that there's no way that a doll, has a robotic skeleton, Terminator underbody, which is what he ended up having. But yeah, that whole ending climax of the movie was great. Starting with when he attacked the cop in his cop car. All that was just great. So, I mean, if you haven't seen Child's Play, you don't necessarily deserve to die, but you should go check it out.
You should definitely check it out. And check out some of the sequels, too. I think, most people kind of pan the third one. I actually thought it was okay for what it was. Second one is a little redundant, in my opinion, but still fun. They're all fun. They're just kind of like Saturday night popcorn movies. They're not like, can't take them too seriously.
We tried to do this a couple episodes ago, and that is do a giveaway. And this is for the Chucky. Now, he's not from the original Child's Play. It's from Child's Play 2. So his face is a little bit stitched up. But it's a little Funko Pop keychain. So if you're into the Funko Pop vinyl characters, it's just a miniature thing of that. Send us an email. Post on the Facebook page. Give us some feedback. Or just say, hey, what's going on, guys? Love the show. Or, hey, you guys suck. Quit doing it. Whatever. We'll be back next year with some more horror movies.
And maybe we'll toss in a Canadian movie or two as well.